So my name's Elaine Hamm, and I am the Vice President of Research for a pharmaceutical company called Accele BioPharma, and we manage really early stage pharmaceutical companies and help them go from really early stage research to hopefully a drug that can help people. And I coordinate the research. If going back to the past, I do have a PhD in microbiology, which I always jokingly refer to. I have a PhD in poop because my original PhD research was on antibiotic-associated diarrhea. So I know how to spell diarrhea, and I tend to bring it up a little too much in everyday conversation. So I tend to joke that that's what my PhD is in, but it really was what my research was focused on, was finding out more about antibiotic-associated diseases, and one of those happens to be poop. And have since I got my PhD in microbiology, I have done a variety of things in science, everything from being a chemist in the lab for a company to working at a university to help take university research and try to commercialize it and take it from their bench to other people's benches, and all the way to the investment side, so the business side of science of investing in pharmaceutical companies. And now I work for a pharmaceutical company. When most people think of, when I tell them I'm a scientist, they think that I wear a white coat and I'm in the lab, and honestly I'm not. I coordinate the research efforts, and that sounds like a very vague term, but what it really means is I do everything from help design the experiments to analyze the data and coordinate the purchasing of scientific materials and chemicals and everything in between, which is quite a bit. But I don't actually hold the pipette and move it from one test tube to another. And so that's, I think, sort of people's impression of when you say you're a scientist, that's their immediate, but it's not at all what I do in a lot of ways because I'm not in the lab. So Oklahoma has a really big biotech community. I think people would be surprised to know that, but we actually have, from the university side, we have a lot of bio research, we have a lot of companies doing research. We're lucky enough to be a part of that, and our goal at our company is, it can be such a challenge to develop drugs, and I don't think people really quite understand the amount of time and the amount of money that goes into it, and how many failures there are along the way. And failures for a number of reasons. It can be because the science didn't work, you didn't cure, the disease you set out to cure, but sometimes it can be just having the people with the business skill to take it, to get funding, to carry out the experiments that you'd like to do. It can be a number of different things that have nothing to do with the science. And so, what we really try to do is to make that process easier, because once something's in clinical trials, it can have a 10% failure rate. Well, that number goes up even higher in the before clinical trial stage, and it can be really challenging to get a drug to market. And what we try to do at our company is try to make that process easier, to know whether something has potential or not faster. I wish I could say that I was the girl that always played with a microscope, and I did play with a microscope. I had one of the early stage microscopes. Actually, I think it probably is in this office, but these are the slides I actually looked at. I had them framed, so those are my first microscope slides. But what really got me interested in science as a career, because I don't think I really connected it as a kid that it could be a job. It was something fun that, when I got a bug, I would go look at it under the microscope, but I didn't really think about it from a job perspective. But what I did do was watch the movie Outbreak, which is not necessarily the most scientific movie out there, but I saw the opening of Outbreak where they were all dressed in these level 4, hazmat suits, and were called away to take care of this horrible disease in Africa. And I thought, wow, that sounds awesome. I want to go do that. Not a great science movie. Also, I am not meant to handle anything of the bio level 4 level of I'm a pretty clumsy person, so I would never make it up to bio level 4. They probably keep me at bio level 2 where I won't be a danger to myself and others. You know, I think everyone told me, well, you're good at piano, so you should go do piano. And my dad was a chemist. And in fact, like this is something he used to mix chemicals in when he was a chemist. And, but he never really taught me to be, you know, you should go into the family business. It wasn't a family business. But at the end of the day, what I was really good at was not, you know, this necessarily, it was more of a hobby for me. What I was good at is critical thinking and trying to solve problems. And that was what I was far better at. So, you know, you sort of get stuck into what you think is a job, but really it's a whole bunch of other skill sets that you learn along the way. I mean, I don't really always do microbiology in the lab. I mean, we have a company that is in antibiotics, but I work in hearing loss. I don't know anything about hearing loss when I started this job, but I could take the skills that I learned along the way to figure that process out. So it's always, you never know what your career is going to be. I love learning something new every day, and I also enjoy solving hard problems. And science is nothing but hard problems that need to be solved. And, you know, I like to take really complicated problems and boil it down to a very simple solution, because there's something really great about that. But what's even more exciting, because I'm in not just science, I'm in drug development, the thought of being able to take something that I'm doing today and that could actually help somebody down the road is really important to me. I think everyone thinks that you have to be really good at science to be a scientist, and I would posit that that's not true. And I don't want to degrade what I do, but I wouldn't say I was naturally good at science. You know, again, I was a music major, and that was my skill set, and I was good at writing, and that was my skill set, but nothing in my test scores said, you know what, you should be a scientist. What I would say is that everyone has a science that they're naturally good at. Something that's, you know, you understand it better than other science. I am terrible at physics. Anything to do with pushing a ball up a hill and calculating friction, or if you fire off this ball at this angle, it will land here. No, I can't. Anything math, science, it's a little bit harder for me. Chemistry, probably the same way, even though I was a chemist at one point. But microbiology was something that I just innately understood. It was something about it that it wasn't hard for me, as hard as other science. So I would say that people can just find the science that they love the most, or might be actually really good at, and not to get discouraged because you're not good at all of the sciences, that you can't find something that you could be good at. The things that make me a good scientist are the things that I'm also good at. So communication and writing and problem solving that have nothing to do with understanding the subject incredibly well. You're solving really hard problems. You know, when we do drug development, I mean, there's a reason. So antibiotics are the perfect example. Antibiotics, I mean, there's a reason why we don't have new antibiotics. It's very difficult to develop new antibiotics. We haven't really made a lot of advances since in the last 20 years in bringing new antibiotics to market. And it's because it's really challenging and hard, and bugs keep changing and keep adapting to the things that we're doing. Add on to the fact that people aren't putting money into antibiotic research from a pharmaceutical perspective, it makes it even more challenging, because now there's not money to do that. And it's really hard. So, you know, the very nature of what we do is a very hard thing and challenging, but to really commercialize science, or to really develop a drug, requires more than just good science. It requires business skills. It requires communication skills, and it requires interaction with humans. And sometimes we scientists are not very good at that. And we really have to be better at that to communicate why what we're doing is important to the world, why you should care about why there should be more antibiotics, that type of thing. So in how I got to where I am, I had the science degree and I had the scientific knowledge to do drug development, but really it was because I had business skills, and I studied how to write a paper to not just as another scientist, but to the public. that type of thing. And I think that's, and how to interact with humans. I had to read books on it. It's it can be challenging. We're all sort of introverts, and so learning how to communicate as an introvert. I would say really find which part, what it is that you love about science. Not focus necessarily on a specific subject, but what is it about science that you love? I love the problem solving piece of it. And so when I thought about what I wanted to do as a career, it was solving big problems, and to me that was drug development. And I would say don't get discouraged. And like I said, science can be very intimidating and very hard, but that it gets easier over time. You learn more over time, and it's a competitive field, but you can find your own voice if it's something that you're really passionate about. And I think the key, and it sounds cheesy, but really finding what you're passionate about is important as a scientist, because it's a hard job, because there's a lot more failures than there are success, and you have to be prepared for that. So being really passionate about what you're doing helps you get through all of those lows in the process. So, hi, I'm Dr. Elaine Hamm. I hope you enjoyed watching and hope you learned something. And if you learned something, help others learn something by liking this, sharing it on social media, subscribing to the YouTube videos, watching more videos, and sharing the knowledge. Thanks. Does that explain it?
Yeah, that's perfect.